The Dr. Cloud Show and all of our Facebook viewers. Welcome to the Dr. Cloud Show version 2. I think we popped on with a software glitch a few minutes ago and then we disappeared, but we're back. So I want to say hi to everybody, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you for joining us this morning. And I hope your day is going well. After a couple of days, I was on the road back in Atlanta where they know how to fix the good food. So shout out to all my Atlanta friends back there. And we are live. So we are going to do what we always do, which is we're going to talk about life and we're going to talk about fighting dysfunction one dynamic at a time. And we do that by talking to you. And the way to talk to you is you got to call me. So here's the number, 844-940-2774, 844-940-2774 to get on the program. And the other way to talk to me is you can post your questions on one of the formats where you're watching Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook. So a couple of quick announcements. So remember, upcoming live 2-hour webinar. If you have relationships, this one's for you because it's about trust. How do you build it? How do you know whether you should trust somebody, maybe even after they've screwed up or not, or maybe even before you've ever trusted them, you're in a new relationship. Is this person trustworthy? I don't know, I'm getting kind of a greasy feeling here, but they seem okay. I don't know, they're nice, but should I trust them? Good question. Are there ways to know that? Yes, there are. We're going to talk about those. Also, if you've been betrayed, how is trust restored? Can it be restored? And when it is restored, what has to happen? And when it shouldn't be restored, how do you know that? And why should you ever withhold trust? And is it a good thing to do? Yes, it is in some instances for certain reasons. So February 21st, live right here, 5 o'clock Pacific. And if you can't be there live, you can stream it afterwards, but you have to sign up for the live event. Here's how you do it. You go to boundaries.me/trust. Boundaries.me/trust in order to do that. So, and while you're there, check out boundaries.me. It's a platform. Think like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or we have all those different shows. Well, this is our platform, boundaries.me, where we have over 90 courses in these kinds of topics, life topics, relationships, clinical issues, life skills, all of that on boundaries.me. Become a subscriber and you get a daily video coaching session from me every single day. I climb into your inbox and go, get out of bed. Come on. Let's go attack life. Moving you one step closer to what you care about. So go to boundaries.me and check that out. Become a subscriber and we can be friends. That's cool. Now, let's go to the thought for the day, I guess we'll call it. I started to say, kind of, what's the point today? But it's a thought and it's a point. And that is a big one. I'll start with a little story. I was doing a workshop one day and it was on parenting. And I think the title was Raising Successful Kids or something like that. And this lady raised her hand during the Q&A and she says, so if you could tell parents, what's the one thing that you would tell parents that they have to focus on to raise successful kids? And I said, well, there's not one thing. She said, but what is the one, if you had to, just one thing? I said, but there's not one thing. She goes, but if there were one thing, like what would be the one thing? And I said, well, it's like saying, pick one, air, water, or food. I mean, there's not one. Without the other two, you die. So there's not one thing. She said, but if you did, and she kept hammering me. And I said, finally, well, I guess I'd teach them not to ask stupid questions because there's not one thing. I said, but all right, let me pick one of the food groups for you. And I'll give you one. How about this one? I would teach them to lose well. And she looked at me and she said, "Why would you want to do that? I mean, we're trying to raise successful kids. Why would you want to teach them how to lose well?" And I said, "Because they will. They're going to lose." And the difference in successful people, one of the differences in successful people and unsuccessful people, is that successful people lose well and unsuccessful people don't. We're going to talk about that concept for a few minutes here because I want you to lose well. Because here's how you lose well. I'm going to give you the bottom line first. Unsuccessful people lose in a way that keeps them stuck, and they tend to oftentimes repeat the mistake or how they lost, and it turns into a pattern of losses. Successful people, when they lose, they don't stay stuck. They treat it very differently. And as a result of the loss, they learn and they gain wisdom. And therefore, they don't repeat it. And that's broadly speaking the two paths. Now, let's unpack the particulars about that. Number one of how to lose is you must lose with an attitude of grace and compassion towards yourself, as opposed to anger, guilt, shame, condemnation, or other forms of self-attack. Now, there are a number of reasons for this, but basically, look, let's just do the math. Here's where you are. Here's how you wanted to perform. This is the goal, okay? And if you fail, and the goal, how you should have been, is attacking you and putting you down. You idiot. I can't believe you did that. You're so stupid. You'll never be able to do it. And it's attacking you. Let me ask you a simple question. What do you do with people that attack you? Do you embrace them? Do you move towards them? Do you try to be their friends? You try to snuggle up next to them? No. With people that are against us or attack us, we typically either move against them or we move away from them, fight or flight from attack. So if the way we want to be and the way we should be and the goals are attacking us, what is it about my dog that just knows when I'm about to make the most important point and she decides that it's the time to alert the neighborhood that there's danger outside? I don't think there's danger. There's some kind of delivery going on. But think about this. When the goal is against you, what do we do with people that are against us? It becomes an enemy. It's adversarial. We move against it or we move away from it. So how in the world are you going to improve and get better at a goal that is judging you and against you? It is an adversarial relationship. And therefore we fight, flight, or freeze. We give up. We move away from the task. I can't do it. Or we get angry and say, stupid anyway, and blame something else. You see people in this cycle of defeat over and over and over. Now, that's the science of it. You know, the Bible puts it pretty much the same way. It says if we're under this demand of an adversarial regulations against us that are judging us, we will repeat the cycle and it gets worse over time. Paul says that throughout the book of Romans, especially in chapter 7. He says, the good that I would do, I don't do. I do the very evil that I would do. I'm a wretched schmuck. That's the Greek version of that. He's all, and you've seen people in this cycle and they fail over and over and over. And they make one more trip to the altar. I'll never do it again. I'm so bad. I'm so bad. And they come back and they try it again. They just stay stuck because of the guilt and the shame and the condemnation keeps them from taking a very different stance, which would be, all right, I missed it. I lost. I'm sorry for the parts I did intentionally or unwillingly or stupidly or kind of whatever. But I want to learn. I want to get better. God, help me to get better. Coach, help me to get better. Coach, I threw an interception. What do you think I did wrong? You see the difference? There is no success without failure. Let me say that again. There is no success without failure because success is a final culmination of a process of approximations of getting it right. I don't know the exact number. I'm going to Google this really quickly. How many times does a toddler fall before he or she can walk? I have heard. Oh, wow. Wow. Ready for this? I bet you can't match this in anything you're trying to pull off. I bet you can't fail this much. I guarantee you can't. A typical toddler is going to fall between 15 and 20 times per hour. All right. Let's say they're up and around, I don't know, call it just 12 hours a day. Let's see how this works out. 12 hours a day times 20 per day times 30, 7,200 times a month. Give them about a year to learn that. And we're talking, well, it really takes a couple of years. So we're talking about 90,000 failures as I do the math. And I'm probably wrong on that. You can check it. Yeah, there you go, folks. Learning how to do sales and you didn't make that sale and you think you're a loser and you'll never be able to be a salesperson? Wrong. Not till you get to 86,000 rejections. Learning how to date, learning how to be social, and learning how to go mix with people, and you go and you screw it up and you drool on yourself or throw up in your lap or something at dinner and you go home and say, I'll never get a date. Well, wrong, not till 86,000 attempts. Hey, it's a process. It's a process of learning how to do something. I remember I interviewed Tony Blair one time, and when he was prime minister, he gave a lot of big speeches, if you will recall, and that's a pretty high office, probably number 2 leader of the free world, probably. And he said when he first ran for office, he was so bad at public speaking. He went on his campaign and so he gave his first speech. There were only 6 people that showed up at the campaign rally. Well, what if you had said, I can't speak? Then that'd have been the end. What if, Tom Brady just retired, one of at least. Some of you probably, who knows who's the best ever, but he's right. He's one of them. Think you ever threw an interception? Yeah. Think you ever fumbled? Yeah, he did. But what if you come back to the huddle? I'm such an idiot. I'll never be able to throw a football. Come on. Let's look at how you look at failure. The science of this says you have to look at it and ask the question curiously. Okay, what am I learning from that? What did I do that I can do better this time? Let me try and get a little better this time. And each time is a little better. And get over the guilt and the shame. And it's also good if you're surrounding yourself with people who see it that way too, where you're doing a little better every time. So there's the thought for the day. It's interesting. A lot of people of faith really struggle from this because when they quote sin or fail, they'll experience a lot of guilt and come crawling back from God. Oh, please forgive me. Please accept me. Do you know that's not the Christian way? Do you know that, people? That's not the Christian way. That was the Old Testament way. I was just reading this morning in the book of Hebrews where it says it used to be that they would have to crawl back and give sacrifices and feel guilty for their sins over and over and over and over and over and over and over each day and each way and each season. And it says, no, there is now a new covenant where he went in and secured forgiveness once and for all. So they do not have to do that over and over and over. And then one of my favorite verses, it says, he is made perfect once and for all those who are being made perfect, meaning you have been forgiven once and for all for everything while you're getting over the very mistakes that you need to be forgiven for. Same thing that the science says. There's only one way that works in the universe, and that's to be accepted and free, even when you're failing, in order to get better. So let's change this stuff in the head. Whether you're a boss, a parent, an individual, or a spouse, or an extended family member, stop beating up you and others when you fail and give compassion and grace and help them to try to take the next step to get better. That is the way you learn how to walk. After I shut down my calculator there. What was it, 86,000? I probably didn't do that math right. It's a lot, people. Poor toddlers. Glad I learned to walk. That would hurt today. Okay, we're going to go to the questions now that we are getting here as we move in to the next segment of the program. Jessica, how many, well, I won't ask how many. What is your next question that you're getting posted on the social platforms that somebody wants to ask?
All right, I've got one for you. Okay, someone wants to know on Facebook, I am mustering the energy and patience necessary to be a stay-at-home mom to 3 kids under 7 plus a 3-month-old. I have the hardest time not being an absolutely horrible parent to my kids, especially when I'm sleep deprived. Do you have any advice for postpartum depression?
Well, there's a kind of two questions. The first thing that you described, being overwhelmed with, it sounds like 4 kids, right? 3 and an infant.
Yes.
Take the postpartum out of it, and that's just overwhelmed city. I mean, that's just a lot. And I want to focus on your the first phrase. You said something like, "How can I muster up?" Read it for me again, Jess.
I am mustering the energy and patience necessary to be a stay-at-home mom to 3 kids under 7 plus a 3-month.
Yeah. I don't. I know what you mean by mustered up, because sometimes we just have to go to the well, right? We got to go deeper and pull it out where we didn't know it was there, but it was there. And I don't think you muster up more than is there. And so I would want you to, we got to go to the well as parents. We got to go further than we think we can go a lot, but you can't muster it all up. It's got to be put into you from the outside. That's a big, big, big part of this. It's got to be injected into you. Look at the words of the Bible. It says to encourage one another. Courage has to be put into us from the outside. It says in Hebrews, gather together so you can spur one another on to good works. Pushing each other, helping each other. It says when people have burdens too big, that we should carry one another's burdens. So I really, 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 really would hate to see any mother or father, for that matter, who's a stay-at-home, of any kid under school age that's doing it on their own. I'll never forget one of the most incredible incredible things. There was such a blessing to Tori, my wife, when our kids were babies and toddlers and preschoolers. And we actually did this. We developed this community. It didn't exist. We went out and handed out flyers in the neighborhood and told people to give them. If you have an infant under 1, we're having a backyard barbecue, bring a dish. We didn't know anybody. We just moved here, and 14 couples showed up. We handed these out for a few weeks. People just walking around the neighborhood. Now, you have to be careful, right, in some places. But yeah, come if you got a kid under 1, bring a dish. 14 couples showed up with babies that didn't know each other. And we had so much fun that first night. They said, let's do this again. Somebody said, well, let's do it next month at our house. So we did it 2 or 3 times. And then what happened was all the stay-at-home moms, you know what they did? They said, let's get together every Friday for like at least half the day. And they had play dates and supported each other. And then that led to through the week connecting with each other. And it was an incredible community where they helped each other. So I would do that. I'd look to extended family. I would call I'd call the church and your local church, say, what do you have for moms? Is there a MOPS group or whatever? You got to get some community around you. And on the postpartum depression, please, please, please go see your doctor, because there are ways to help that. And that's a big deal with energy. Okay, let's go to the phones and talk to Annalisa, who listens on Facebook and downloads the podcast. And she is naturally hard on herself. Welcome to the human race, Annalisa. And that's what we were talking about earlier. And now it's transferred to her son. Well, probably, through the placenta. As much as anything you've done, it's kind of genetic in the human race. She wants to know how to help herself and her son not to be hard on themselves. Annalisa, welcome to the Dr. Cloud Show.
Hi, Dr. Cloud. Can you hear me?
Hey there. I can hear you so well. You know what? If you are hard on yourself so far, I'm going to be hard on you, because so far you're perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have to be honest. My therapist, who I talk to every week, is going to freak out when I tell her I talked to you on this. She's going to be so excited. She's the one who told me about you, and we're big fans. We discuss you a lot, and I follow you on social media, and I'm always sharing screenshots of the things you post with her, and she's now using them with her clients. So, anyways,
will you give her a message for me?
Yes.
And tell her thank you for being in the fight with me as we're fighting dysfunction, one dynamic at a time, and thank you for joining this army, and let's go do it even better. So thank her for that.
I will. So I'm a huge fan. Follow you on social media. Listen to your podcast a lot, too, because I can't watch these all the time live. And I'm doing boundaries.me and your courses, and I'm trying to work on being the hard on myself part. I listen to things that you post about that too. But so my issue, though, is that recently I went to my 6-year-old son's parent-teacher conference. And she commented, she said, well, he is really hard on himself. Like if he doesn't know an answer to something, she's like a simple worksheet, he got flustered and overwhelmed and started crying. And if he gets it wrong, he's very hard on himself. So she looks at me and goes, I was just wondering, if you have any advice or what you're doing at home so we could work on this. And I looked at her literally dumbfounded and was like, well, I am in therapy for this exact same thing, so I don't really have any advice. But seriously, I'm just wondering, how can I help him at a young age so that he can hopefully get this under control earlier? Because it took me a long time to realize this is not the norm for people in their minds. And, the issue is now when I start to think of how to help him, then I become double hard on myself, because I'm like, you did this, and I have to fight that voice in my head And I'm just kind of, I know you're not a child, like I know this isn't a child, therapy program, but I'm just wondering if you have any advice for like how to translate this to a 6-year-old and the things they're going through.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked, because I think a lot of people can relate to this. Um, have you ever seen our book Raising Great Kids?
No, I haven't. I didn't know that one was out.
Okay, might want to take a look at that. Let me give you
Okay.
a couple of like broad categories to look at. Number one, one of the places. First of all, let's just stop for a second and let me tell you the main place that all humans get this from. And I said it, when I was about to bring you on the air. I don't know if you could hear me, but I said he probably did get it from you. He got it from the umbilical cord. Did you hear me say that?
I did.
In other words,
yes.
That if you look at the science, humans are born with a tendency to be perfectionistic. All systems of psychology have focused on this for centuries. The cognitive people call it the critical catastrophic voices and thinking patterns and perfectionism and all or nothing and judgment, all the kind of words they have for that. The psychoanalysts call it the critical superego. The transactional people call it the overbearing parent in our heads. There's the ego psychologists call it splitting and the all good and all bad. Every system of psychology, the philosophers, Kant called it the moral imperative that we can't ever escape. Every system of human study has always said humans have a tendency to do this. Hey, the Bible talks about it as we are born under something in this universe called the law of God, which judges us. And so it's sort of like as soon as we're born, we fall into a pool of existential criticism. All right. So that's kind of in the stuff, right? Now then, basically our developmental years are in large part an opportunity to undo that's already there. I mean, if you remember your son when he was 6 weeks old, do you remember how judgmental he was? If you didn't pick him up in time, pretty critical, wasn't he?
Yep.
He would scream at you, right? I mean, that's pretty critical. Well, later that same split all good or all bad criticism gets turned towards the self. So what happens is, as parents, maybe a couple of categories. Number one, we can model it. Okay. So he will be looking to you. Does he have a dad in the home?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He'll be looking to you. He'll be looking to dad. Does he have siblings in the home?
He has a younger sister.
Okay.
Who's 3.
He'll be looking to how they play. He'll be looking to friends. And he's watching, how do people fail? When they make a mistake, how do they do it? They go, oh, didn't do that right. Let's try that again. Hey, help me with this. Or they go, stupid. So we learn how to do this from the outside, modeling. Number 2, we internalize the voices in how they correct us. So what you want to be doing very, 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 very consciously is it's all about tone. So you want to correct without a hint of anger, because anger gets interpreted as critical, internal against us voices. So the more empathic and the softer, oops, there's a mistake. Well, let's try it again. What do you think we can do this? And then thirdly, turn it into a learning moment. And then overtly give messages about when nobody gets it right the first time. It's okay. Let's try it again. And then fourthly or fifthly, I would sit down and talk to him about it. Say, sometimes, how do you feel when you make a mistake or you don't get the right answer? And I would just engage him. He's 6 years old. He can have this conversation. and then begin to talk about it. And then I would tell him, I'm going to be watching you for when you make a mistake or, don't get it right. I'm going to watch you to see what you say to yourself. And then I would get him to make a little chart of what are the mean things you say to yourself and what are the nice things you can say to yourself and to your sister and other people. And I would just coach him how to be a more forgiving, accepting person overtly as well. So those are some things you can begin to work on.
Well, that's awesome. Those are great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And I'll tell you one funny story about, about our daughter, Olivia. You know those chores charts where you have the smile, you have the categories, and did I pick up my toys, and did I put my dishes up, and did I do this and do this, and so each one, you have a little sticker, and it's a smiley face or a frowny face, right? Well, when when Olivia was really little, I'm going to say 3-ish, something like that. And we started the little chart, and she got some smiley faces, and then one day she got her first frowny sweat face. She didn't do something, and so she didn't do her chores or whatever it was. And so when we put the frowny face up on the little sticker chart, she went crazy, like screaming, and I mean the world had ended. It was the worst thing ever. And she, no frowny face, no frowny face, no frowny. She's protesting and screaming and all this. Olivia, that's what happens. And if you do it right tomorrow, you get it. And we're kind of coaching her through this. So, we get through the trauma. About 30 minutes later, I go back in the den, and that little sticker has peeled off the frowny face and covered it up with a new smiling one. How about that? It starts early, but we got to get them to where they can accept themselves. So, and then just the way the way you model it and accept him. This is going to be a lifelong thing. It is for all of us. So be encouraged, and he can get over this, and he will. So thanks for your call.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Jessica, let's have a question from what people are posting.
All right, I have another parenting question for you. Someone from Facebook says, learning to lose well can involve a lot of grief, especially when feeling that teenagers are making poor choices. I am finding some grace for myself for the mistakes I certainly made in parenting. So my question is, how do you move past from the regret and grief in parenting into a more loving, accepting relationship with kids?
Okay, read it one more time.
Learning to lose well can involve a lot of grief, especially with feeling that teenagers are making poor choices. I'm also finding some grace for myself for the mistakes I certainly made in my parenting. So my question is, how do you move past from the regret and grief in parenting into a more loving, accepting relationship with kids?
Okay. Here's why I had you read it again. It sounded like in the beginning, he or she was talking about intrapsychically for them. How do you move past the grief and to where you accept yourself more? But then it said with the kids. So that's where I got a little confused. So let's address both a little bit. First of all, I'm glad that you are accepting your imperfect parenting. Let me give you a big star on your little smiley chart. And that is typically the parents that lose long term are not the parents that do what you have done, which is that you've acknowledged that, you know what, I didn't get it all right. I made some mistakes, and that, yeah, there's some grief in that. So I would cry it out, but I wouldn't cry it forever. And I would do it in a group of other parents who are doing the same thing. I mean, I look back at my parenting. There's things, if I look at it now, I would have done differently. And, I regret those. But, if we stay there, that's not going to make a better better future. We're always making mistakes. All of us are. We can say things or do things better. One of the things I used to ask my kids all the time is, where did I blow it this week? Because we need to kind of see that as part of the process. And I'm glad you're doing that. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is where Jesus was talking to Peter before Peter denied him 3 times. That's a pretty big mistake. He said, I'll never leave you, Lord. I'll never forsake you. I'll never deny you. And Jesus said, you're going to deny me 3 times before the cock crows. And then when he told him that, here's what Jesus said. He said, but after you have returned, you will become a source of strength for many. So before he failed, he predicted his future success after the failure, including failure as part of the path. Including the failure as part of the path. He saw it coming, just like the toddler. Any parent expects their toddler to walk without falling. It's not going to do it. So I want you to kind of look at that regret, and it may be pathological regret, and get past it. And I want you to turn it vis-a-vis your kids. I want you to turn it into a conversation with your kids. Let's learn together. So I would want to sit down with them and say, you know what, when you did this, I handled it this way. What would be a better way? How would you like for me to handle it? One of the things we used to do with our kids, especially when they were starting to have more and more freedom. This would have begun maybe, I don't know, late elementary school or so. We would sit down and I would give them the project of, I want you to come up with some rules around the house in these certain areas that we talk about, use of electronics and bedtimes and this, that, and the other. And I want you to come up with what the rules ought to be. And I want you to come up with the consequences for if you break them. And then I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to sit down and compare notes and kind of see what we think is reasonable. It was interesting to me that the kids would always come up with a little stricter consequences than even I would sometimes. But it's a dialogue. God says, come, let us reason together. Interesting passage on the God that knows everything and knows. So I want to get in a conversation with them. And that's what I want you to do. Now, here's what you don't do. What you don't do with teenagers is you don't give up the boundaries and the limits when they make poor choices. All right. But here's what you must do. You must not get tethered to their ups and downs. And what parents do in making mistake in parenting teenagers is teenagers are going to be all over the map. They're going to have good days and bad days, and they can change within an hour. And parents go up and down with them. Oh, they're doing so well. Oh, no, they're doing hard. And you can't do that. You're like a dock, and they're the boat. You got to give it enough line where the waves can go up and down, and you're just sitting there. And you give them the rules and all that, and they break it. You don't scream at them and go, "Ooh, Joey, bad decision on that one, buddy. That's going to cost you." Remember what I said? If you A, B, C, or D, well, hope you do better next time, but, not going to be fun being grounded. Instead of, how could you do? See, where you get all up. Don't get up and down with teenagers. It's not good for them, and it's certainly not good for you. I remember one time when our girls they're 21 and 19. And I remember I was just doing a talk this few years ago and just talking about raising teenagers. And I said, I can't believe how much fun it is. I mean, literally, and I'm telling you this, I have never had as much fun as when our girls were teenagers. It was the most fun time of parenting. And I didn't expect that because everybody said it's such a nightmare. And when people start to talk to me about that, one of the big things was this very principle. Look, they're not having fun all the time. They're going up and down. They're doing things they shouldn't do. They're getting disciplined. They're having consequences. They're, whatever. And their moods and trauma and drama and all of that. You're the doc. they're the boat going up and down on the waves. So just if you're tethered too tightly to them, you're going up and down every time instead of being stable and just being able to watch the movie. It's a great movie, right? So just, watch it and say, good job. That's pretty cool. You're going to get to go do this now. Or, ooh, bad decision. Well, I hope you do better. See, it's not going to ruin my day if they're grounded tomorrow. It's going to ruin theirs, but we're separate from them, aren't we? So you got to stay separate from their moods. And that's a big part of that. So don't give up the boundaries just because you might have had some regrets. All right, Jess, we are almost out of time here. Give me one more from social, and then we got to call it a day.
I'm actually, the audience has been pretty quiet today. Yeah, they've been listening.
That's very interesting. Sometimes we have sometimes it's so interesting on the social platforms, with on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, you see all of this talk, but no questions. Like everybody's really engaged. And other times we get bombarded with questions. So I'm going to read one. We don't have time to go to another caller today. Actually, and I want to apologize to you guys. We had some technical difficulties before we went on the air today, so the program's a little shorter than normally. But let me take one of these questions. I'm going to read this one from a caller in Denver who needs to set boundaries with his wife but doesn't know how. A simple disagreement led to her locking him out of the house all day. What can we do to get some help? I would say get some help. If you're at the point where, where she's locking you out of the house, I'm going to take your word for it, on a simple disagreement. Now, I would say simple disagreement would be something that didn't hurt anybody. It's a disagreement on somebody had an expectation violate. I want you to do this. You didn't do this, something like that, where it's kind of like, that's a simple disagreement. You get locked out of the house. This is a major breakdown. And I would say to her, you know what? I am very sorry for how you feel disappointed. And I would try to enter in through that route. I'm going to, Albie P is still on the phone. I want you to gift him our webinar called The Marriage Equation and also The Art of Confrontation, because what I want you to do is sit down with her first and say, help me understand why it was so hurtful to you. And I want you to get empathic, and I want you to get, because obviously it was, and it's exceeded her capacities for rational thinking. So don't go in there and try to explain to her why this is unreasonable and wrong and this, that, and the other at the beginning, because she's not thinking rationally. If for a simple disagreement, she locked you out of the house. Or is it this was the 86th time that this has happened? So I would start with empathy, and then I would say, you know what? I think we're at the place where we need to get some external help, because what hopefully we can get to a place where we can have a disagreement like this and become teammates and solve a problem instead of getting angry and locking each other out of the house. I'd like to get to that place. So I want to go get some help. This is at a level where either she's got some kind of triggers that she's dealing with or something. But this is time to get help. Okay, guys, February 21st. Be there, 2-hour webinar. Go sign up, right now by going to boundaries.me/trust and sign up for the trust seminar. How do you build trust? What do you do after it's been broken? Can it be rebuilt? Who do you trust? All on boundaries.me/trust. And while you're there, check out the boundaries.me platform. All righty. Good to be with you. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.